The film opens with a flashback 5 months earlier, showing Tammy leaving her mother's home in San Diego to fulfill her dream of sailing the world. A lover of the sea and surfing, Tammy had previously worked as a cook on a sailboat and missed life at sea. She travels first to Tahiti, arriving without a job or a clear plan of how long she would stay, a fact she shares candidly with the customs officer. To support her stay, Tammy takes on odd jobs cleaning and maintaining boats and launches at the island's marina. One day, while working with a colleague, Tammy sees Richard for the first time as he sails his boat into the marina. Richard asks them for help tying his boat to the dock. Tammy and Richard are clearly instantly attracted to one another. The next morning, Tammy sees Richard cutting fish on the dock and brings him some ice to preserve his catch. Richard seizes the opportunity to invite her to a fish dinner. Tammy accepts but mentions she is a vegetarian. Richard promises to prepare a gourmet vegetarian meal if she brings the vegetables, and he will cook them. That evening, Tammy visits Richard on his boat, where she realizes he lives completely on the water, sharing her deep love for the sea. Over dinner, Richard talks about the challenges of sailing: constant motion, seasickness, being perpetually wet, limited meals, mostly fish or canned food, and the lack of a stable sleep schedule due to the waves. Despite all this, Richard loves sailing immensely. He invites Tammy to join him on a sea voyage on his boat, and she joyfully agrees. The next morning, Richard and Tammy embark on a sailing trip. They visit an island, enjoy their time together, and capture their happy moments in photographs. On the sandy beach, they grow closer, and a beautiful love story begins between them. On their return trip, Richard hangs their pictures inside the cabin to keep them constantly in sight. He also gives Tammy a gift, an elegant evening dress, which she loves. Later, they go out for dinner at a restaurant, with Tammy wearing her new dress. They get to know each other better. Tammy learns Richard built his boat 7 years ago while living in South Africa. Richard learns Tammy's mother gave birth to her when she was 15. Despite the age difference, they have truly fallen in love. They share a dance. Sometime later, as they shop together, they plan to sail the world together, with Japan as their first intended destination. By chance, Richard and Tammy meet a man named Peter and his wife, Christine. Peter is an old acquaintance of Richard, who used to maintain Peter's boat. Richard introduces them to Tammy, and they all have lunch together. During lunch, Peter and Christine offer Richard a job to deliver their yacht, the Hazana, to them in San Diego, California, Tammy's hometown, where her mother still lives. The offer is for $10,000 plus 2 first-class plane tickets after the delivery. While Richard sails the yacht, Peter and Christine would be finishing their week in London before returning to live on the boat. Richard accepts the offer, and he and Tammy are thrilled. That evening, Peter and Christine host a dinner for them on the yacht, then leave Richard and Tammy alone to familiarize themselves with the boat, especially since the voyage will take about a month. Tammy writes a letter to her mother, informing her that she is returning to San Diego on a sea journey with her new boyfriend, Richard. The next day, Richard and Tammy say goodbye to their friends and to Tahiti, sailing off on Peter's yacht. They enjoy their first day at sea immensely. Richard spends the day teaching Tammy navigation, steering, coordinates, and directions. That night, he proposes marriage to her. Tammy happily accepts. Richard gives her a simple ring that he made, promising to buy her a proper engagement ring once they arrive. The following day, they hear a radio signal from the Coast Guard warning all vessels of a dangerous hurricane approaching from the west. Richard, with Tammy's help, calculates a solution to keep them out of the hurricane's center by heading due north. Unfortunately, the hurricane overtakes them before they can escape its path. The storm's power makes it impossible for Richard to steer the boat, forcing him to let the waves dictate its movement. As the hurricane intensifies, they try to lower the sails to prevent the boat from capsizing. Tammy attempts to contact the Coast Guard for help, but the extreme weather conditions make communication impossible. Richard instructs Tammy to go down into the cabin to take cover. Just then, a massive wave hits, nearly capsizing the boat. Tammy falls inside the cabin, is injured, and loses consciousness. Richard is thrown overboard, hits his head, and is dragged underwater. The next morning, after the storm has passed, the yacht's mast has broken and fallen into the water, and the engine is dead. Tammy wakes up from her blackout, calling for Richard. She climbs out of the cabin onto the deck. Pulling in the safety line that was attached to Richard's clothing to keep him tethered to the boat, she is horrified to find the line empty. She cries out and screams Richard's name. Tammy searches the vast ocean for Richard but cannot find him. She attempts to contact the Coast Guard on the radio, but she can't get a signal or receive a response. Tammy breaks down and cries until she falls asleep briefly. When she wakes up, she tries to start the engine, but it won't turn over. Waking up alone on the damaged yacht, Tammy first tries to cut away part of the ruined sail dragging in the water, but the whole rope snaps and the sail drifts away. She dives in to retrieve it, but gets trapped underneath, barely managing to free herself. The boat drifts further away, forcing her to swim with all her strength to get back aboard, which she successfully does. She immediately begins repairs, using strong tape to seal the holes ripped into the hull by the storm. When she tries to use the radio, water causes an electrical short, and it is completely destroyed. Tammy then retrieves a spare sail from the cabin to replace the one lost. Using a hand pump, she begins the grueling work of sucking the accumulated water out of the cabin. Finally, she successfully rigs the new sail onto the mast, allowing the crippled vessel to move powered by the wind. Looking through her binoculars, Tammy spots Richard clinging to a small lifeboat that had been swept overboard during the hurricane. She is able to maneuver the main boat closer by manually steering the rudder with the wind. Securing a safety line around her waist, she jumps into the sea, reaches Richard, and pulls him onto the yacht. She finds his leg is broken and severely wounded. She splints his leg with wood and also realizes he has broken ribs from the mast's impact. Tammy moves Richard to a sheltered, comfortable position to rest. For the next 2 days, Richard is too injured to move, so he guides Tammy as she navigates using charts and the coordinates device. Tammy is shocked to discover their position, 1,500 nautical miles from any search area, far from shipping lanes or flight paths. Despair creeps in, but Richard reassures her that everything will be fine. However, he notes that with the engine dead and the opposing winds, reaching California could take months, not 25 days. Tammy has a brilliant idea: head west toward Hawaii. It would add 500 nautical miles compared to the direct north route to California, but the strong winds would be at their back. Richard agrees, telling her which rudder setting to use for the westward course. After 5 days, Tammy realizes they have drifted 18 miles off course. She suspects the error came either from miscalculation or a faulty rudder that drifts on its own. As time passes, their food and water begin to run out, forcing them to strictly ration the remaining supplies. After 10 days of sailing, Tammy is forced to abandon her vegetarianism. She jumps into the water to try and catch a fish, but cannot bring herself to kill it. She returns to the boat, and then a downpour of rain allows them to collect precious water in containers. After 29 days at sea, all food and water are gone. One night, a large cargo ship passes nearby. Tammy screams and calls out, but no one hears or sees her, and the ship sails on. Tammy collapses, believing the end is near. Richard again attempts to comfort her, expressing his absolute confidence that her intelligence will find a way to save them. The next day, Tammy tries to keep Richard fully conscious to prevent him from succumbing to pain and hunger, assuring him they are only 690 miles from Hawaii. After more than 33 days of sailing, the truth is revealed. Richard had died during the hurricane when his head hit the mast, and he was swept away. Tammy's vivid moments with him at sea were all hallucinations that helped her cope. It was her love for him and his imagined guidance that inspired her to act and sail the broken yacht, and his presence was her comfort throughout the ordeal. Although Tammy has faced the agonizing reality of Richard's death, she knows she is still close to death without provisions. This time, she successfully catches and eats a fish, even though it's raw, knowing she must eat to live. After 41 days at sea, a pigeon lands on the yacht, a sign of nearby land. Tammy looks through her binoculars and spots an island and a small rescue vessel. She fires a distress flare. They see her, and she is rescued. Despite the trauma, Tammy eventually returns to Tahiti. She decides to sail Richard's boat, which was still there, and vows to never stop sailing, to live life to the fullest, just as Richard would have done, keeping his memory alive forever.